You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. I am Daniel, and not alone today, but Clint's still on vacation. You love to see it.
Who approved Clint's vacation?
I don't listen.
Who approved that PTO?
The executive producer. Oh, you assume that there's no P. There's no P on that. It's just TO. You understand? Like the executive producer, I don't know, fell asleep at the wheel and must have just signed off on an email that he didn't read. So Clint will be back next week, but happy Friday to you all. Our good buddy, friend of the podcast, John. You can find him on Twitter at John Tweets Sports. I'm sure you already follow him there, but if you don't, he'll probably give out some takes today that you'll want to go respond to, so you can respond directly to him there. John, thanks for being here. Excited to have you. How's your Friday going?
Oh man, Friday, I'm always fantastic when I come on this podcast. And fantastic on a Friday is just a little, alliteration for the people. So I'm doing great. I'm excited for the weekend. We are going to the Low Country, going up to Hilton Head Island for the long weekend. Our kids are out of school early next week, so I'll be on some TO. Excited for
play a little golf up there.
We'll play a little golf. We'll play golf. We'll ride some bikes. We'll walk on the beach in the windy February winds of the Hilton Head Beach. But
the gale force winds.
Absolutely. It'll be a great time though.
Good time will be had by all. Well, thanks for joining us. If you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching on YouTube, thanks for joining us there. Leave us a comment, subscribe to the YouTube, leave us a rating and review on the podcast listening app of your choice. We are here with you all off season. Normally Clint, my co-host, and I, but we're Georgia fans. We had a couple of fans on yesterday, the Weldon brothers on the podcast yesterday. Colby Weldon defending his Stetson Bennett for Heisman take. John, any thoughts about Stetson Bennett for Heisman?
Hey, listen, anything can happen. And when you have a national championship quarterback coming back, expectations should be high.
Very diplomatically said. Anything
can happen.
Anything is technically possible. He is eligible to win the Heisman.
Hey, listen, last I checked, everyone is technically eligible to win the Heisman.
That's right. And listen, before you laugh it off, Colby brings up some good points. Caleb Williams, one of the odds-on favorites to win the Heisman next year. You compare his numbers last year and Stetson Bennett's numbers last year, and you're going to find some very similar numbers. It's just one of those guys rides a hype train and the other one does not. And so
and one of those guys has ridden that hype train to Los Angeles, one of the major media markets as well. So
that's right.
I mean, we all know, like, postseason awards, there's a lot of brand loyalty that goes into those. And
it's just the ESPN hype machine.
Yeah, it's just hard. It's hard. The Heisman is not what it used to be. But at the end of the day, Stetson at this moment, he as we sit on a Friday in February, Stetson has as good a chance as anybody to win the Heisman next year.
That's well said. All right, let's forget about that. And let's move on to the matter at hand today. We're back on this recruiting hype train. We're going through the 2022 class, and we're going through recruit by recruit. And I got to tell you, when we started this series, John, it's been, I thought it would be an interesting idea. I thought it would be something that people would care about. It's February. There's nothing going on. Signing day is over. Spring practice doesn't start for a year and a half. And so we got some time to kill. I thought it would be a fun ride. But this has been educational for me. I'm learning things as we go through and look at these kids, and it gets the juices flowing.
It does,
think
right?
about Georgia football, man. Like
It does.
it hits a little different when you start talking about these kids that are not prospects. We don't talk about a ton of prospects on this show, but these are Georgia Bulldog football players here. And the young man we're talking about today, not currently enrolled, but he is signed. He is committed and signed to the class, and that is Kristin Miller from Cedar Grove High School down in Ellenwood, Georgia. 6'4", 295, 300, 3 bills, defensive lineman. Listen, I am excited over the next 22 minutes to figure out what I'm going to title this podcast, John, because there are so many titles running through my head right now. And so I'm counting on you to bring the heat, and give me a good title. All right. What jumps off the page at you? What is the thing that Georgia fans who may not be familiar with this kid should be most excited about when they think about Kristin Miller coming to Athens?
Yeah. So for me, that's very easy. If you go watch any highlight film of Kristin Miller, there's a bunch of them on Twitter. If you just search his name on Twitter and look at the videos, there's a bunch of them on Max Preps and Huddle and those sites. You will see one thing very, very immediately and very apparently is this guy has what we like to call get off. He gets off the ball as quickly as any recruit as I've seen. And that is something that, especially at his size, when you're pushing, 300, his, just like the ability to fire off the ball and wreak havoc and really make an offensive line have to think about how they're going to block you, because it's very difficult when you're that size, but it becomes even more difficult when you have the explosiveness that a kid like this has. And so for me, what jumps out the page is his get off, and just his ability to immediately kind of have that immediate like penetration. And again, we're talking about high schoolers, right? So they haven't played the Alabama offensive line. So when you watch these, you'll see, right? I mean, they're playing other high schoolers that are not going to play on the offensive line, the SEC. But there's always this kind of scale. And when you see videos of Kristin Miller firing off the ball and being 6 yards deep in the backfield and tackling the center, the running back, and the quarterback, like tackling 3 people because he's so far back in the backfield, there is that you can kind of extrapolate that to be like, all right, he's gonna have some penetration. He's gonna create some challenges just because he's so quick off the ball. So that's what stands out for me. I'll also say he's just kind of like he's a wide kid, and I don't mean that like disrespectfully, but like there is this like center of gravity that you have to account for with him. He's very, kind of he's just thick, like he's just a big thick kid. So to be as big as he is and explosive as he is, it's a really, really great combination.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Number one, that high school, number one, yes, everyone should put these kids in perspective. They're going up against high school players. Yeah. But number two, so is everyone else's high school tape. And so when I see you do things that everyone else on their high school tape is not doing, well, what do you think? That probably means that you've got some things going for you. And so, I think I wish Clint was on the pod today because he played offensive line back in the day, 30, 40, 50 years ago when he played football. But normally you say like quick twitch and get off and like these types of words to describe a guy on the line of scrimmage on the defensive front. And normally you think about like a guy screaming around the edge, like you think about Von Miller, you think about Adam Anderson, you think about these guys who are just screaming in from the around the corner and whipping a tackle because the tackle can't get out of his stance and move to the left. But this guy, that's not the only way that you get off the ball quickly and disrupt the offensive line. If you think about an offensive lineman, he's got to go from nearly a full crouch into a stance, get his hands up, and get ready to block. And if you hit him before he hits you, that's bad news for him. All of a sudden, he's on skates and he's backing up, and you're throwing him out of the way. And when you combine the strength that this young man seems to have with that quick get off, like, we're not talking about a Leonard Floyd type player here. We're talking about a 6'4", 3 bills guy, and he gets out of that stance in a hurry, and he's coming right through the middle, like most direct line of sight to the quarterback. And that is something, Georgia fans, we probably don't have to tell you. When you have big dudes in the middle of the defensive line who can wreak havoc in the backfield, hello, 95 Devontae Wyatt is a prime example this last year. When you have big dudes that can get into the backfield and wreak havoc, that's a recipe for success.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why Georgia has gone out and recruited guys like Jaylen Carter is a good example that I think you're going to see a lot of that this year. That explosiveness, it's different. Again, it's different when you, to your point, it's different when you're an edge rusher, and that's kind of like what you're trying to do, right? Like you're looking for physicality, but you're looking for speed, and you're looking for just being the guy. But when you can take guys that aren't supposed to be fast and explosive, and you can put them in the middle, and they're wide and they're explosive, it's a lot to be excited about. So very different player than from like a Jordan Davis, who Jordan Davis is explosive in his own way, but he's also just a mountain, right? Like Jordan Davis, like just took up space. These are guys that Kristin Miller is the type of guy that's not going to take up space like that. He's going to actually cause you to have to really think about how you're going to block him because he's just so quick off the ball.
Yeah, which two offensive linemen are you going to devote to him are the questions you're going to be asking in the huddle. All right, I want to ask you you mentioned Jaylen Carter and some guys that are coming back on this defensive line. I want to ask you about the prospects that Kristin Miller sees the field this year. First, want to talk about BetOnline.net. It is your online sportsbook experts. You know about them if you've been listening to the pod. John's getting the golf game ready on Hilton Head because he knows that the Masters is coming up. Masters is one of my favorite things to bet on in the entire world. You get all the early lines and favorites, all of that on BetOnline. Before the Masters, though, is March Madness, one of my other favorite things to bet on in the entire world. BetOnline's got all of the bets and the picks that you can make for each one of those games as well. So head over to betonline.net. Enter the promo code Locked On. They're going to give you a bonus on your initial deposit, which means you deposit money, they're going to give you free money, and you take all that money and you wager it on the NBA, the NHL. You wager it on some NFL futures, some college football futures. You sprinkle just a little bit, plus 5,000 Stetson Bennett to win the Heisman, and then you just watch the money roll in. BetOnline.net. It is the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, and it is the only place that Clint and I trust to place all of our wagers. So go there, head there right now, betonline.net, enter the promo code Locked On, and get a bonus on your initial deposit at BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, John. You mentioned Jaylen Carter. Well, we mentioned Jordan Davis. We mentioned Devontae Wyatt already. Anchors in the middle of the defensive line. Absolute stalwarts on the team. They are moving on. Their business is #finished, and so they are moving on from the University of Georgia. Jaylen Carter is coming back. He is the star of the defensive line. Jaylen Carter, Nolan Smith are anchoring this defensive front. Both of them come back. I expect monster seasons from both of them. I know you do too.
Absolutely.
So when you think about where a guy like Kristin Miller, obviously big dude, But there's other big dudes on this team. And we saw them begin to rotate through. There's guys that have been waiting in the wings and playing behind All-America type talent in Georgia. Potentially, we got 2 first and maybe second round draft picks. Devontae Wyatt's just working his way up those draft boards right now. He
absolutely is, yeah.
And so these guys have been waiting in the wings, but that's not a discredit to them. That's a credit to the guys in front of them.
Yeah.
So when you think about some of the returners and you think about Kristin Miller, what do you see as some prospects for his 2022 production?
Yeah. He's one of those guys that I think is we talked about this in one of the episodes that I was on talking about other recruits, but he's not an early enrollee, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get on the field. But I do think he's athletic enough. I think honestly think he's one of the most technically sound prospects or signees in this class. So he's not coming in with a lot of, a lot of times you sign a guy and he has kind of all the immeasurables and and you're bringing him in and you're going to teach him a lot of like really good technique. I think he has the technique to play, but you're looking at behind guys like Zion Logue, Warren Brinson, Jaylen Carter. You even have Tremel Walther and some of these guys that have been around for a while. They're going to be back, and so I don't see him seeing the field a ton, but Georgia, as we've mentioned previously on some of these episodes, Georgia rotates a lot of guys. I do think Kirby, I do think he will see the field. I don't see him being kind of one of those like immediate impact players. And it's very difficult to do that with the team that Georgia has built with that front 7. It's very difficult we've got Jamon Dumas Johnson, who is a heck of a linebacker. But he was playing behind Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker and Channing. So you come into this Georgia system and you look at guys that are absolutely talented. It doesn't mean anything about their future prospects if they don't see the field a lot in their true freshman season. But yeah, he would be one of those guys that I would put. He could surprise a lot of people because he's that good, but you're going to have to beat a lot of dudes. And so I don't see him having, a major like year from a production standpoint.
Yeah. We talked about Marvin Jones Jr., right? And at that edge position, there's a bit more opportunity. I mean, there's obviously guys, and he's going to have to battle out. He's not just going to be handed a starting job. But you would say there's a bit more opportunity than in the interior of that defensive line, because entrenched in that defensive line, and to your point, the only guy in really recent memory that I can think of in that interior that stepped onto the field his freshman year and got significant playing time early was Jaylen Carter, because he was just such an absolute freak of a talent. But all the rest of these guys, these first and second round draft picks that we're talking about right now, they had to earn it. They had to wait. They had to put in the reps, and they had to show Trey Scott and Kirby and the powers that be that they had what it takes. And so I don't these types of guys tend to be forgotten about. Right. Like, because you don't see them for a little bit. They're not on special teams. Obviously, he's not going to be a candidate for special teams. And so
not going to be run down on punt coverage.
He's not. Trayvon Walker, who is another guy that played early, not a similar player really at all. But you're not going to see him there. And so you tend to forget about Tremel Walther or a Zion Logue, or you get excited about these guys, and we do these features on them when they sign. I do think that Kristin Miller is going to be a guy that is going to wreak havoc in Athens. And you mentioned too, I think he's going to be a guy. You mentioned this to me before we started recording. I think he's going to be a guy that Georgia fans are going to love, just because he's just a likable dude, right?
Listen, go watch his he has a commitment video on YouTube that you can find. He has his signing day, his post kind of like signing ceremony interviews. This kid, he's gonna be a star, man. Like he has the personality where We saw some of this from Jordan Davis this year, right? So you saw like him leading the band, and you saw kind of that personality coming out of Jordan Davis. This kid reminds me so much of that. He is absolutely just an absolute like pleasure to just watch. His energy is good. He's actually, pretty hilarious. Like I think, So he's a kid that I think from a personality standpoint, he's going to stand out wherever he is for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to what the people want. The people want the comps. They need the comps. They want to know, is this the next Emmitt Smith or is it not the next Emmitt Smith? These are the questions people are asking. And so we're going to do that. John and I will be right back, and we're going to hit you with our best Kristin Miller player comps. But first, want to tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is the tastiest protein bar on planet Earth. It is the one that Clint and I turn to. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's high in fiber, high in protein, low in sugar. It's keto approved, which Clint has since abandoned since he's gone on vacation. But I'm sure at some point he'll get back, rekindle some self-discipline, and he'll go back to it. And at that point, it'll be fine because he'll still have the Built Bars. They come in a wide variety of delicious flavors, all of which can be found at BuiltBar.com. If you go there right now, enter the promo code LOCKEDON15, you'll get 15% off your first order. That's 1 box, 2 boxes, 10 boxes, whatever you want. Built Bar has it. They come in a wide variety of flavors. They come in a wide variety of textures. You can find whatever is right for you. Chocolate flavors, fruit flavors. There's marshmallow ones. There's crunchy ones. They got everything that you need, everything that you want. Pre-workout, post-workout. 2 o'clock lull at the office. Throw some in your glove box. Throw some in your desk drawer. Wherever you need them, Built Bar is the one to turn to. Locked on 15 is the promo code. BuiltBar.com is the website. The tastiest protein bar on planet Earth.
T's and P's to Clint on his journey back to ketosis.
You're not gonna love it. Shouldn't have quit. Should not have quit. You should have stuck with it. He's drinking margaritas on a beach somewhere at this exact moment. So there's not really, can't really dissuade that.
No.
All right, let's get to the comps. I think I got a home run. So I'm going to let you go first because I think whatever it is that you bring, once I say mine, you're going to go, yep, Daniel, that's the one. That's the one that it is. I feel that confident about it. So I'm going to let you swing first.
Okay, I'm coming out of left field. Absolutely out of left field. Okay. It's it's Ronald Acuna Jr. Absolutely. It is literally, man, talk about T's and P's.
By T's and P's to Major League Baseball, the literal worst sport in the entire universe. Why would you do this to yourself, base? Look, all we want is to celebrate. That's all we want is to celebrate, and you ruin it.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that another time. Ronald Acuna Jr. is not my comp.
Okay.
Just to be clear. But so David Pollock did not play inside, and he did not. He was not pushing 3 bills.
Well, I mean, you see some of those old photos, and he looks like he could have been
pushing 3 bills.
He was flirting with that 3rd bill.
Maybe he was. When I see Kristin Miller,
David Pollock,
I see. Listen, I'm telling you. This does not mean he is going to be David Pollock. But the way he uses his let me say it.
Okay.
His explosiveness, the way that he uses his hands, the way that he gains leverage on the people he's going against. He reminds me a lot of his style of play is if David Pollock were a 3 technique, that's what Kristin Miller reminds me of.
Best defensive players in the history of the University of Georgia. All I need from you is a number. Where do you have David Pollock on the list?
Number 1.
He's the best. I agree. I agree. I think David Pollock is the best defensive player to ever play football at the University of Georgia.
Well, maybe
people are going to be mad about Champ Bailey, and there's a lot of great There's a lot of great players.
No,
but it's David Pollock. And you just said that's my comp.
His instincts, the way he uses his hands, the explosiveness, the way he gains leverage. That's my comp. Is he going to be David Pollock? No.
Probably. That's what John is saying. Probably he will be.
All right. Comments at John Tweet Sports.
Look, let him know. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go someone that is much more
reasonable, much more closer to the
not reasonable, because I think I'm going to give you a better college defender than David Pollock. So I'm not saying it's not reasonable, but it is someone who plays the same position and has the same body. And so I'm not going to have to stretch and say well, it's only these things and these things.
Wow.
I'm going to give you who I think is the best interior defensive lineman to play college football in maybe the last 20 years.
Okay.
His name is Ndamukong Suh. And this is who I think Kristin Miller is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. People, you forgot, but Ndamukong Suh played at the University of Nebraska in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And he finished 4th his senior year in the Heisman voting. And you might think that people were just throwing him a bone by voting for him for the Heisman. But let me tell you, that year he had 85 total tackles from the defensive tackle position. And you say that's a lot of tackles for a defensive tackle. Well, 20 and a half of those tackles were for loss, John. 20 and a half tackles for loss in one season.
That makes no sense.
He had 12 sacks from the defensive tackle position. 12 sacks. You want to talk about a guy who could just get off the ball, hit the guard or the center in the mouth, remove them from the play, and then immediately get into the backfield, make a tackle. I'm sorry, do we need to rewind the tape to segment 1? I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you told me Kristin Miller was. That's exactly who I should get excited about.
And Ndamukong Suh is it. What you also described is David Pollock if he weighed 40 pounds more.
Yes, exactly.
Ndamukong Suh is it. You nailed it. That's it.
But I think I know it's different. This is where I'm going to get into the nuance, okay? Because it's not the same big personality, but I think the Ndamukong Suh has a huge personality. People do not like him because he rubs them the wrong way, and he thinks what he thinks and all that.
Well, he has a villain personality.
He does.
But that does not mean that it is not big and not.
Kristin Miller comes off much more jovial, much more your buddy and guy you're going to joke around with and all this stuff. But it's the same type of gregarious, people are drawn to you type of personality. And so I even see a lot of that in the same. And, you look at Ndamukong Suh redshirted his freshman year, that would never happen today, but he did that back in the day in Nebraska. But his redshirt freshman year, he had 19 total tackles. His sophomore year, he had 34 total tackles. And so just like Kristin Miller, he was eased in. But by the end of his career, he was the most dominant defensive player in all of college football. And he went on to have a very lengthy, very prosperous NFL career off of it. And I think you could see the exact same thing from a guy like Kristin Miller, because it's 2022, and now more than ever, getting into the backfield and disrupting the quarterback is the name of the game. And when quarterbacks are throwing this quick stuff, they're getting the ball on the outside as quick as all get up. The edge pass rush, it doesn't become less important, but it is not elevated to the level that it used to be when you have these 5-step drops and quarterback sitting back there in the pocket, because then you're trying to beat the tackle, get around the edge, and push. The most effective way to pressure a passer in 2022 is to bring something right up the middle.
Absolutely.
Do you think Kirby Smart knows that? Why do you think you saw our best defensive player, Nakobe Dean, blitz so many times this year? because Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart knew that's the most effective way to get pressure on the quarterback.
Yep. These days, I mean, with mobile quarterbacks,
yeah,
your edge is like you've got to have contained, right? Like you can't. It's not it's not the days of Lawrence Taylor and those guys just beating the left tackle to the quarterback's blind side. So that's a great. It's a great point.
Yeah. So Ndamukong Suh meets David Pollock. One of the most likable and least likable college football players of all time, and probably the two most disruptive defensive linemen to play football in the last 20, 30 years.
I love it. I love the Ndamukong Suh comp. I think you nailed it. One thing I will add is real quick is Kirby Smart. There's a video of him that you can find on Twitter and other places of him talking about NFL scouts. And he says, you mentioned it with Ndamukong Suh. And I think this is going to be Kristin Miller's progression too. He said, I've never had an NFL scout or GM ever come to me and talk about how much somebody played as a true freshman in year one. He said, they want to know what is the kid in year 3. He said, year 3, how they have developed, where they are, their immeasurables, their technique, those types of things in year 3. And it's not even then, it's not even that much about playing time. It's about their actual capabilities. But that's something that people should remember with somebody like Kristin Miller. Again, you mentioned it, like these guys, we talk a lot about them in recruiting season. If we were Dan Mullen, but we talk a lot about them this time.
Does Dan Mullen have a recruiting season?
No. Dan Mullen. Yeah, I think I saw the Rams run a wheel route in the Super Bowl, and I just envisioned Dan Mullen somewhere
as an analyst.
He was in a basement of a lake house somewhere. Yelling wheel route while his family was off like doing something else by himself. Just getting so excited about a wheel route.
So excited.
But yeah, I think year 3, that's Kristin Miller. I think that's where Georgia fans should anchor on him just really, breaking out, and maybe he'll do it before then and surprise us. But I'm excited about this kid.
Absolutely. And man, and to your point, there's a reason that you don't see all these guys transferring. These Zion Logues, the Tramel Walters, these guys, these, like, if they didn't know that the first couple of years were much more about learning the system and getting reps and getting better, then they'd be long gone. They'd be long gone to a program that was going to play them. But Kirby's got these kids believing the truth, which is you pay your dues, you wait your turn, and then you make the most of your opportunity. Somebody call Channing Tindall and ask him if that strategy is working out. And,
absolutely. 10 draft picks last year, probably going to have more this year. And I think Kirby, it is exactly in that situation where you can't, if you're a front 7 player right now in college football, there are not many places better to come and spend 2 years going against the best of the best on the offensive line, learning the best technique. Like there's not many places that you can find that type of development.
Which is why you talk about indispensable assistant coaches, and Trey Scott's got to be up there towards the top.
He just got a giant raise. He just got like a $300,000 raise as a result.
Worth every penny. That dude's putting in the work. You remember when we couldn't sign a defensive tackle? God, I thought there was a time. It was the dark days. There was a time when I thought we may never sign another defensive tackle.
Yep. Now we're signing. We have signed just this year. We have signed 3 or 4. I know 3 of the top 14 defensive tackles in the country, maybe 4. Kind of crazy
to see it. Love to see it. All right, John, thank you so much as always for being on the pod. Clint will be back next week, and we'll be back on Monday. We'll have a full week of shows next week, and so join us then. We look forward to hanging out and talking more Georgia Bulldogs football here on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, your team every day. We'll see you.